Thanks, everybody, for coming today. We're obviously going to try and lead you through some of our experiences and successes and some things to watch out for with the design build process. I'm sure a lot of you are aware of the design build process, but we'll go through it in a little bit more depth and, again, try to answer any questions at the tail end of this. So, design build, and I guess maybe we shouldn't go to Wikipedia all the time for our research, but at the very least, this identifies what Wikipedia defines as design build. Certainly you can read that, but a lot of the advantages we'll try to touch on today, and again, like I said, a lot of pitfalls we'll also touch on today. These are some of the, I guess, the obvious ones that we've seen with our working relationship, and we can talk about those as well. So a little bit about the traditional versus the design build process, and traditional is also design bid build. So with the design build process, usually the design team and the owner is right from the start as a cohesive team making decisions and making establishing budgets, establishing goals, that type of thing. In a traditional design bid build, typically the owner would hire the architect. The architect would utilize engineering consultants to develop construction documents. Those construction documents may either be given through a construction manager, a CM, or would be put out on the street for a bidding situation for everyone to review. Obviously, those are two of many adaptations of these methods, and we'll probably get into a little bit more specific on what our relationship works in terms of more of the design build using a construction manager as the team cohesiveness. You want to talk about?
Yeah, so a couple of things, I'll grab the mic here, if you want to go back to that one. A couple of things that Tom was mentioning here is when you start to establish the design build team, a couple of the key criteria that you're looking for, and we'll talk about it in the next slide too, is that you're really trying to make sure that you form a team, everyone that you need to get involved, and get everyone kind of on the same page. And that leads itself to setting up almost one person type of thing. It's almost a marriage, so to say. And what that does is that gets into some of the other things that start to happen later down the road. So as you establish things going forward, you can always have essentially one point of contact, but yet the two teammates are still working together on it. As we start talking about it too, one of the big things that starts to happen in design build that's presented today is time savings. You know, why go design build versus the traditional CM approach? And you start to see where that time saving starts to happen, where you're starting on some of the construction process as it's happening during the design phase. Whereas the traditional, it kind of goes initiation, design, then the construction portion of it. So as we roll into the next one here, we get into some of the advantages, and this is what I was kind of talking about earlier, the closer synergy between the constructor and the design build team. You want to make sure that you're essentially creating one relationship all in there. Designs and construct, and I think I'm stealing your part here,
No,
but that's okay. We'll just
You're
keep rolling
fine.
with it. Designs are more constructible and typically more economical. So when you start to make a statement like that, it becomes a how come, why is it? And what starts to happen is because you've taken those two teams together, you're able to control how it's being designed, but also then how it gets built out into the field. Also, from an economical standpoint, it gets you into a position where you can start to say, okay, as we're designing things, here's how the pricing works along with it. And we'll get into that a few down here. You want to jump in here, Tom?
Yeah, certainly. You know, we're talking about a little bit of the advantages for the design build. I think key for the advantages to really be realized is that you got to have the right team, you got to have the right relationship, and like whether you're doing traditional or whether you're doing design build, communication has got to be key. There also needs to be a mutual respect between all the various players. The owner obviously brings their perspective, the construction team brings their perspective, and the architectural design certainly needs to weigh into all of that as well. And everybody needs to understand what everybody does well, and certainly takes that from the standpoint of budget and constructability, as Jason has pointed out, and apply it to the project. That as a team, it turns out much better than if one person was kind of running the show.
So, a couple other things to note. You start getting into the schedule, the fast tracking. We talked a little bit about that at the beginning. But what happens as you get into that is you're able to get yourself into a position where you can start on that construction portion a little bit quicker while some things are still being designed. And there's some helpful hints to that, because sometimes what you run into with your major hurdles as you're getting into that are, let's say the soil bearing isn't quite what we need it to be, or we need to adjust some of the footings and foundations. Okay, so as we're getting into that, now we can make some of those adjustments as we're moving forward, and that will affect some of the balance of the design.
Oops, I jumped
Oh,
too
you're
far.
getting
There
really
we go.
carried away here.
I am a little touchy here. So as we had mentioned before, there has to have that mutual respect for all the team members and what they bring to it. There also needs to be an established cost and a budget right up front. It should be stressed that that budget established up front really needs to be a realistic budget. This is not a bidding phase, so this is the information phase where we all want to know what the real costs are. The costs are what they are. And we want to determine those as early and as often in the design process as possible for this to work. We also see that in a lot of design-build relationships that we need, as in traditional, we need to help the client establish what their scope is. Certainly when most clients are faced with the many tools of and designs that are available, the wish list gets long. And part of our process as a team is to really kind of whittle that down to the needs as well as the aesthetics that they really want into the project. The other key component is that we like to involve the major trade subcontractors as early as possible in these conversations. We want them to understand, again, what the needs of the team is. What's the owner's main concerns? What are the architect's aesthetic concerns? And making sure that constructability is also part of that coordination. So we like to bring in the major trades early on, so again, they have as much information as the rest of us as we kind of head into the construction documents.